Hey gang, what's going on? This is the lecture for the intro to the realism unit. All right, I'm using screencast. So what you can do is basically just follow along as I'm doing the lecture. You can go back and pause it and unpause it and do everything you can to take notes. I'm looking for about a half page of notes. You know, the notes in bold are some of the most important, so make sure to at least get those. I only have about 15 minutes on this program, so I'm going to jump right into it. So let me take you through the lecture here. And if you notice, what starts is a picture walk here of the Civil War. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because this was sort of the divisive moment in American history that really changed a lot of things for a lot of people, as you can imagine, because it was huge. It figuratively and literally um, split the country. And the cultural change in this was reflected in literature, and it got a lot darker and more gritty. So let's just go through some of these pictures, and you can see um, through this how terrible the Civil War was. I read a stat recently that was if you take the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, Vietnam, World War II, World War One, the Revolutionary War, put those all together, they don't equal the number of casualties of the Civil War. That's how many people died and were hurt. Oh, come on, let's load. We'll skip that one. Um, and the battles were just absolutely vicious. And remember, this was brother on brother. This was American versus American. And here we have photography is going to come about at this time too. So you'll see actual images of the era. There's a fallen soldier, more soldiers dead here. Again, another bloody battle, and this was taking place, mainly throughout the South, but also bled into the Northeast a little bit and into the West. The terrible image of just the violence that war causes. Now, this next picture here is what most people's norms started to look like more as cities started to sprout out during this time period, moving from the 19th into the 20th century in the advent of industrialization, which would change anything. And of course, we see this isn't the splendid countryside and natural images we saw before. Here we have a city, I believe it's Philadelphia, during the time period. And we see the modern coming in with the train and the horse there. So it's sort of like the old and the new clashing. This was a tenement building. So you're going to see a lot of things in realism have to do with how things were at the time. And one of the biggest things was there weren't many laws and codes about how people had to live. Like now, a building like this with so many people cramped in, you can see it's just congested, which lead to disease and just terrible conditions. That wasn't illegal or anything at the time. There we go, another city street. So you can see the images again are much grittier and whatnot. But here I have an image that juxtaposes that, which was the divide between rich and poor was really starting to become more aware. So you had people who, the haves, which were far less than the have-nots. We have two finely dressed gentlemen here. We have a nice manor. So in the middle of the city, you'd have all this terrible slums and everything. Then outside, people would build these big stately homes. So you can see the divide between rich and poor and the equality there. Here we have inside one of those buildings, not a greatest place to live ever, with the police sergeant just sort of in awe. Here we have some more working poor here. You see even the children kicking in and everything. And now one of the big things that came with industrialization was more people weren't working on farms anymore in agriculture, but in factories like this. And as you can see, it just looks so chaotic and dangerous. And also, you'll notice that these ones down here, there are no child labor laws. So you have kids, it looks like filling baby bottles or milk bottles or something. People as young as 7, 8, 9 and stuff like that would work. And you see another dramatic image here. So basically, a lot of the social conventions we take for today weren't established right away. And it'd take a generation for people to catch up with how we should interact with these new jobs in this new world. So, this is about the period where naturalism and its subset, realism, take place, about from the split of the Civil War to about 1920, or it still continues today. So after the horrors of the Civil War, figuratively and literally tore our country in half. This new movement arose, as I said, that was a big rejection of Romanticism and a lot of the ideas we've studied. America had sort of lost its innocence after the Civil War and no longer simply regarded literature in this optimistic, joyful tone that we've got a lot of. This movement spread across America and was based on the new hardships that I just went over, facing man as we surged into the modern era, into the 20th century here, with the beginning of the industrial age, as I mentioned. Realism and, like I said, its subset, naturalism, and you'll see the difference between those two, were complete divergence from the emotional, good intentions ideals of the Romantic era and the Transcendentalist era. Generally, they painted the world as a far darker and more insidious place, especially naturalism is really dark. So here's a picture that represents that. So here we have a famous picture sort of drawn in the Romantic era here of looking out across the ocean, and it looks like man could conquer, and it's wonderful too, juxtaposed by the exact opposite, like a steamship crushing another one that could be a whale, and it sort of looks like a ship too, about how man is at its mercy. And we're going to see this difference overall. Another one would be, oh, look how lovely it is, a quaint, wonderful village and town, to these dark, sinister streets of what's lurking and what's out there. So again, we're going from sort of light to dark. The big thing you want to note about realism and naturalism that's far different from romanticism is that realists and naturalists wanted to show the world how it really was, to be a real reflection of what was going on during the time. Although the popularity of realism and naturalism arose at the same time, they both sought to bring a more realistic lens through which to view literature in the world. They do have a distinct difference, and you can go, they do have a few differences between them. Okay, and I'm going to show you this really cruddy Venn diagram I drew about the difference between what is considered realist literature and what is considered naturalist literature. Often naturalism is thought of sort of subset, like it's under the umbrella of realism, just like how transcendentalism was under the umbrella of romanticism, but it's its own thing, so it don't get talked about as its own thing. So let's see here. Realism tended to focus on the social and political issues and tended to be a little bit lighter, and it dealt with middle-class issues and characters. You see a lot of that. Naturalism generally focused on man versus nature. That's the first short story we're going to read. It had darker, more tragic characters, and stories and things generally didn't end as well, really bleak. However, you'll see both wanted to show how life really was for people. That's the big thing. So you can pause on there and get sort of the about how they're different. And you'll see that as you read the stories and everything. So let's go on to our major beliefs. Let's see. Let's pick up. So focus on portraying life as it is, which was unfair and difficult, and the fact that we face it alone. Again, the cheery side of romanticism is gone, and sort of although, everything's going to work out, and we're going to be optimistic if we just sort of stick to it. But no, this was a hard and long slog through problem after problem, as life is, with seemingly no end in sight for some of these characters. Additionally, like I said, we face these struggles alone. You're going to see man's loneliness and side of individualism be quite different from what it is and we've seen before. Number two, we're in a constant fight between ourselves, people, or society, and our nature and the many problems. So we find conflict within ourselves. We are in conflict with the natural world and with society in general. Like, we're trying to figure out these problems. You're going to see in a lot of stories we read that a lot of there's a singular character, sort of the outsider, doesn't sort of fit in with how things are supposed to be, and that society sort of doesn't work in their favor, and they're fighting against that, including everyone around us. And this takes place on a daily basis. We all face these things. You can just think about your own life and all the problems you have, both on a micro for you and then a macro as a societal level scale. So another big change was the idea that God is uncaring. So we've had mainly a God that really puts itself in there. The classicists, again, believe through the Enlightenment that sort of left us alone. But this God, we're going to start to see, doesn't care about us and doesn't interject itself. There's no, I saw God in a duck and he's great and therefore he's there. But no, this God, from after the horrors of the Civil War and how we're treating each other and stuff as the modern age arises. So there might be a God. or maybe not, but either way, God is fairly unconcerned with our existence and leaves us alone. So you're going to see the absence of a lot of religion in these stories. Or if it is, it's going to be treated more harshly than we're used to. Another big one, we've jumped back and forth between emotion and reason, as which is more important. Realists were all about reason, and so much so that even if you're emotional, and you'll see this in the first story we read, it can get you into trouble. Like if you let your feelings take over, you have to have cold hard facts and reason in order to live our life. So how do we deal with all the hardships that are coming up in our daily lives? Through examining hard facts and taking a logical look at life. This is what is important in order to survive the onslaught of the natural world and solve all of our societal problems. When you get emotionally invested in these issues, you can cloud your judgment and it leads to tragedy. You'll see that in a lot of stories. So, two beliefs, one for naturalism, one for realism, that are sort of focused in on those movements. So first, naturalism. Thought that nature is cruel and dangerous and needs to be conquered. So this is a big about face from the Romantics, who really thought nature was a place to get in touch with yourself, and we need to be in it, and we need to be one with it. No, 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 no. Nature is horrible, and just like you see in this picture here, will destroy you at any chance it gets. And the only way that we're going to sort of carve out our own world in the natural world is order to destroy and conquer it. Okay? It's a powerful force and deadly, and it'll kill you the second you turn your back on it. Conquer it before it conquers us. Okay, so a big change there. And with the realism stories we're going to read, that man must adapt and try to overcome society's problems, or they're going to be our downfall. So you see with these stories, like I said, and what our unit will be on, it'll all be about, okay, this societal problem, whether it's poverty or mental illness or women's issues. A lot of these started to come into writing, to write about these are the things we face every day and what authors should strive to bring to the public's attention in order to try to fix them. With the advent of the industrial age, man is getting mixed up with even playing God himself. Cities are getting too big. New ideas such as equality and better living conditions are scary and can provide just as many problems, clashing with the old order as they do trying to remedy inequity, right? So as we try to solve these problems, more and more come up. You can see this represented in how today works, how we're always pushing ourselves to understand and treat ourselves better, yet that can cause all sorts of issues as well. Yet in the end, these are things we must solve if we want to continue to progress as people. Okay? And that is basically the end of the lecture. So what to look out for? The writing will be a lot more frank and direct and sort of in your face. It's a lot easier to read because they wanted to reach out to more people. And the first story we're going to start with is actually a Jack London story, and you'll notice how McCandless got it so wrong about how he viewed Jack London, because, again, through the naturalist mindset, nature is not something that wants to get to know us or wants to be in touch with us, but rather is trying to destroy us, just as it did McCandless. So you'll notice in the story how he missed that. It's called To Build a Fire, and I'll just leave it to that. So you're going to explore that as our one sort of naturalist idea, just try to see how this whole unit is going to be darker and sort of take a whole different spin than what we're used to. And then we're going to read a bunch of realist stories in the coming weeks and actually do a problem looking at the issues of the day and then comparing them to how those issues have played out over time. And I'm still coming up with that. So that's the lecture for this unit. I hope it makes sense. Feel free to email me with any questions and keep up the great work, guys. Okay, now I just got to hit stop on the old thing and we'll be all set. Great to say hi to everyone. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay safe.